Tokyo, Japan's coronavirus cases have topped 100,000 9 months after the first case was found in mid-January, the health ministry said Friday. The country confirmed 808 new cases on Thursday, bringing the cumulative COVID-19 cases to 100,334, including 712 people who were on a cruise ship that was docked off a Japanese port earlier this year. About one-third of the cases come from Tokyo, where 221 cases were confirmed Thursday, bringing the prefectural total to 30,677, including 453 deaths nationwide. Japan has more than 1,700 deaths. Experts say Japan has so far managed to avoid explosive infections as in Europe and the US state without enforcing lockdown, most likely thanks to the common use of face masks and disinfectant, as well as other common preventative measures including social distancing. Japan had a nationwide state of emergency in April and May, and experienced a less serious second wave in August, but has since been seeing a slight uptrend in new cases in northern prefectures, setting off concerns of a surge in the winter. Experts have urged extra caution at dining and drinking parties and workplace. According to Health Ministry data, nearly half of the new patients were in their 20s and 30s. Japan's northernmost prefecture of Hokkaido this week raised its warning level after finding major clusters in urban entertainment districts. Experts on Thursday also urged the caution in Tokyo, where the daily count has fluctuated between the 100s and the 200s. In other developments in the Asian-Pacific region, customs agents in southern Chinese city of Hong Kong have seized 100,000 counterfeit face masks and arrested one person. The masks were said to be shipped overseas and had a market value of almost $400,000. The government's information service department said Friday the masks were seized at a storehouse in Hong Kong on Wednesday after agents received a tip-off. The department said, leading to a further raid on a trading company where a 71-year-old manager was arrested. Initial investigations revealed that unscrupulous merchants intended to transship the batch of masks overseas for sale and profit. Customs is looking into the source of the face masks involved in the case. Samples have also been sent to a laboratory for safety testing. The department said in a statement. Customs agents launched an operation across the city in late January involving spot checks on common protective items such as face masks, resulting in 80 arrests and the seizure of nearly 6 million masks, along with other items. The department said mainland China is a major source of personal protective equipment such as masks and bodysuits, some of which have been found to be counterfeit or of inferior quality. India reported 48,648 new coronavirus cases, continuing a months-long slowing trend in infections even as the country adds to its 8 million cases. The health ministry also reported 563 more fatalities in the past 24 hours, raising the confirmed deaths toll to 121,020 and 90, even as cases are dropping nationwide. New Delhi is facing what could be a third wave of infections. The capital is India's worst hit city, and it's among a few regions in the country seeing further new infections, clocking more than 5,000 daily in the last 3 days. The surge comes while seasonal pollution levels are soaring in the capital, worsening respiratory illnesses. Sri Lanka authorities have asked state employees to resume working from home in major townships as coronavirus infections continue to surge. The president's office says government offices in Western Province, where the recent outbreaks have been concentrated, have been asked to switch to remote work as well. Sri Lanka had lifted work from home measures when community infections subsides. But clusters emerging from a garment factory earlier this month and later from the country's main wholesale fish market have resulted in a surge in infections and subsequent restrictions. Authorities also announced Friday that they have closed a resort town known as Little England in the country's central hills to visitors. New Wari area, about 170 kilometers east of Colombo, is in a tea-growing mountain region and is famous tourist destination. MBR Rapa Kumara, the top government official in New Wara area, said the virus is spreading rapidly in the area and all tourist attractions, including botanical gardens, national parks, and waterfalls, have been closed. So far, 9,791 COVID-19 patients have been reported in the island nation, including 19 deaths. U.S. consumer spending rose a moderate 1.4% in September. Washington, D.C. U.S. consumers increased their spending by 1.4% in September, a modest gain but far less than the big increases of late spring, adding to concerns that Americans remain cautious with the virus pandemic resurging across the country and impeding the economic. The September gain marks the fifth straight monthly increase in consumer spending, the primary driver of the U.S. economy since the virus erupted in early spring and flattened the economy. but the recent slight increases reflect an economy weakened by the virus and by the failure of Congress to provide another stimulus package to struggling individuals and businesses. Friday's report from the Commerce Department also showed that income, which provides a fuel for spending, rose 0.9% in September. That moderate gain followed a sizable drop of 2.5% in incomes in August. The economy would weaken if consumers, who drive roughly 2/3 of economic activity, start cutting back on spending now that confirmed coronavirus cases are accelerating and the stimulus aid that Congress enacted in the spring for businesses, individuals, and late workers has expired. The 0.9% rise in incomes reflected strength in the key component of wages and salaries, gains that reflect continuing employment increases as the labor market climbs back after 22 million jobs were lost in March and April. Gregory Darko, chief economist at Oxford Economics, said that after an initial burst in spending as the first wave of lockdowns were ending, the prospect for spending going forward is much grimmer. In the absence of fiscal stimulus package, slower employment gains will be insufficient to prevent incomes from falling below pre-COVID levels, he wrote in a research note. Bank of Canada projects slower economic growth in fourth fiscal quarter of 2020. The September report showed that consumer spending on durable goods such as autos shot up 3% in September. Spending on non-durable goods like food and clothing rose by a smaller 1.5%. By contrast, spending on services increased a modest 1% since the pandemic struck. Americans have been spending freely on goods, from cars and clothing to furniture and sporting goods, while cutting back sharply on purchases in the service sector. Services, which make up the bulk of the economy, include everything from bars, hotels, and restaurants to airlines, hair salons, and movie theaters. The service industry and its employees have been hard hit by people's reluctance or inability to shop, travel, dine out, or attend entertainment events as they formerly did, a trend that is hampering the overall economy. On Thursday, the government estimated that the economy, as measured by the gross domestic product, surged by a record-shattering 33.1% annual rate in the July-September quarter. That increase followed a record 31.4% annual plunge into the previous quarter, and it still left economic output about one-third below the peak it reached in the fourth quarter last year. The third quarter rebound was led by a record 40.7% increases in consumer spending in the third quarter, but the economists worry that this surge will not be sustained in the final 3 months of this year. Economists generally foresee annual GDP growth of around 5% in the current fourth quarter, but they warn that unless Congress can reach agreement on a new aid package for jobless Americans and small businesses struggling to survive, the economy could suffer a reversal early next year. The Spending and Income Report showed that inflation, as measured by the Federal Reserve's preferred gauge, was 0.2% in September and 1.4% over the past 12 months, though that's up slightly from the 12-month gain of 1.3% in September. It remained well below the Fed's 2% target for inflation. The Fed will hold its latest policy meeting next week. The policymakers are widely expected to keep their benchmark short-term rate at a record low near zero in hopes of helping the economy emerge from the pandemic-induced recession. U.S. wages and benefits grow at a sluggish pace amid pandemic. Washington. Wages and benefits for U.S. workers grow slowly this summer as employers sought to hold the line on pay gains in the midst of the pandemic. U.S. workers' total compensation rose 0.5% in the July-September quarter, the second straight quarter of slower growth in wages, the Labor Department said Friday. Growth was the same as in the April-June quarter, that's down from 0.8% in the first 3 months of the year. For the year ending in September, wages and benefits increased 2.4%, the slowest pace in 3 years. The data comes from the Labor Department's Employment Cost Index, which measures pay changes for workers that keep their jobs. The data isn't affected by the mass layoffs in the spring. The figures suggest that businesses are holding the line on labor costs, even as they recall millions of the workers that were laid off in March and April, when the coronavirus outbreak forced the closure of thousands of businesses nationwide. Still, the U.S. has regained barely more than half the 22 million jobs lost to the pandemic. The unemployment rate is a still high 7.9%, though that is down from its 14.7% peak in April. Pay and benefits fell in the third quarter for employees of colleges, universities, and professional schools for the first time since 2009 during the Great Recession. Compensation for those workers dropped 0.4% compared with a gain of 0.6% in the second quarter. Colleges and universities are struggling with declining enrollments amid the pandemic, with many classes conducted online. Wages for state and local government employees increased just 0.1% in the third quarter, the slowest pace in 7 years. State and local governments have also been forced to cut jobs as tax revenue fall. Most states are legally required to balance their budgets. 5 types of dog existed at the end of the Ice Age. For hundreds of years, dogs of all shapes and sizes, Labrador, Labrador, and Terriers, Chihuahuas, and Spaniels have held the position of man's best friend. Shutterstock researchers found that dogs had already been domesticated 11,000 years ago. Now, a study published Friday in the journal Science has shown that the genetic diversity in modern dogs can be traced back to the end of the last ice age, linking Fido and Rex to ancient canine population. Researchers studied DNA extracted from bones from ancient dogs for clues to evolutionary changes that occurred thousands of years ago and found that just after the Ice Age, there were at least 5 types of dog with distinct genetic thousands of years ago ancestors. They found that the dog lineages have mixed and combined and are still present in the dogs of today. Already by 11,000 years ago, before agriculture and before any other animal had been domesticated, dogs had only been domesticated, but they had already diversified genetically and likely spread across large parts of the world. Andrews Bergerstrom, lead author and postdoctoral researcher in the Ancient Genomics Laboratory at London's Francis Crick Institute, told CNA the team of researchers comprising scientists at the Francis Crick Institute, the University of Oxford, and the University of Vienna, and archaeologists from more than 10 countries found that while this early lineage have changed and mixed over the past 11,000 years, they are still represented in dog populations around the world. Chihuahuas have an ancient lineage. Rhodesian Ridgebacks, while mostly European in ancestry, contain some DNA from an ancient Middle Eastern or African lineage. Bestrom said, well, some dogs in Siberia and the Arctic, such Siberian Huskies, get much of their DNA from an ancient Siberian lineage. Meanwhile, dogs breeds from Mexico, such as Chihuahua and the Mexican hairless dog, are largely European in their lineage, but return some pre-Columbia DNA. All dogs bred from Europe share a common history that started with an ancient mixture many thousands of years ago between two very distinct dog lineage, one related to dogs in the Near East and the other related to dogs in Siberia. This ancient mixing event between these two lineages gave rise to the European dog gene pool, which later would give rise to all present-day European dog breeds. Bergstrom said. The researchers also compared the evolution in dog history with changes in human history. Evolution and migrations, we found that when we compare the history of dogs to the history of humans, to a quite large degree, they mirror each other, suggesting that in many cases the history of dogs has been shaped by humans, Bergstrom said. In many cases, humans would simply bring their dogs with them as they migrated and moved across the world. But in some cases, dogs display different history, suggesting there were more complex factors at play. Perhaps sometimes people moved without bringing their dogs, or perhaps sometimes dogs were traded between human groups. European dogs have lost their diversity, but no one knows why. And while modern European dogs appear to come in such different shapes and sizes, genetically they share a recent common ancestor and are not as genetically diverse as they once were. Stop told theory that before 4,000, 5,000 years ago, Europe had a greater diversity of dogs, with some animals similar to Middle Eastern, Siberian, and everything in between dogs. At the same stage, however, this diversity was lost and is not found in today's European dogs. If we look at present-day European dogs, despite their enormous variation in terms of what they look like, they actually derive from just a small subset of the diversity that used to exist in Europe, he said. It's a bit of mystery how this happened, but likely at the same point, a single population of dogs banned across Europe and replaced everyone else. Pope vows to fight corruption but sees it as uphill struggle. Pope Francis said in an interview published on Friday that he is determined to root out corruption in the Catholic Church, but that he is not overly optimistic because it is a century-old human problem. In an interview with the Italian news agency Adan Chronos, Francis also said he listens to his critics but can't allow himself to get bogged down by every negative thing they say. Unfortunately, corruption runs in cycles. It repeats itself. Someone comes along who cleans things up, but it starts again until someone else comes along to put an end to this degeneration, he said. In a shock move, last month, Francis fired Cardinal Angelo Basil, a former top Vatican official, accusing him of embezzlement and nepotism. Basil, who also has been caught up in a scandal involving the Vatican's purchase of a luxury building in London, has denied all wrongdoing. Catholics react to Pope's civil union support. Cecilia Margarana, a 39-year-old Italian who worked for Basil, was released after more than 2 weeks in jail on Friday, pending a judge's decision on an extradition request from the Vatican. I know I have to do it, fight corruption. I was called to do it, but it will be the Lord to decide if I did well or not. Sincerely, I'm not very optimistic, Francis said, smiling. He was referring to the mandate he received from cardinals who elected him in 2013 to clean up Vatican finance after a string of scandals during the pontificate of his 2 immediate predecessors, Pope Benedict and Pope John Paul II. There are cases of malfeasance, of betrayals, that would want those who believe in the church. These people, corrupt churchmen, certainly don't behave like cloistered nuns. Conservative Catholics have criticized the Pope, saying he sent mixed signals on issues such the pastoral care of homosexuals and those who remarry civilly without church annulment. Criticism can be constructive, and if it is, I took it all on board because it can lead to self-examination, but I can't let myself be dragged down by every non-positive thing written about the Pope, he said. Cecilia Chen, the famous restaurateur, helped introduce authentic Chinese food to America in the 1960s, died at 100 years old on Wednesday. She gained acclaim as the owner of the Mandarin, a pioneering San Francisco restaurant she opened in 1961 that served many dishes that are now staples at Chinese restaurants across the country, like pot stickers, musu pork, and sizzling rice noodle soup. According to the San Francisco Chronicles, which first reported her death, her granddaughter Sienna confirmed her death to the Chronicles, which named Chen the mother of Chinese food in America. Chen, who ran the Mandarin from 1961 to 1991 before selling it, was credited by food magazine Savior in 2000 with nothing less than introducing regional Chinese cooking to America. The restaurateur recounted her dramatic journey to culinary fame in her 2007 memoir, The Seventh Daughter, with Lisa Wells, which was the second of her two memoirs. She was born in 1920 with the name of Sun Yan as one of the 12 children in Shanghai and grew up in opulence in a 52-room palace in Beijing. However, the Japanese military occupation of the city that began in 1937 caused her to flee with one of her sisters in 1943 to live with relatives. The siblings made the nearly 1,000-mile journey to Chongqing mostly on foot, hiding from Japanese fighter planes during the day and walking at night to reach the city in free China. Chen told ETA in 1918, "We didn't even get hurt, but some other students died." She said that's an experience that you'll never forget. Chen met her husband Qiang Liang in Chongqing and moved with him to Shanghai and then Tokyo, where she opened a successful restaurant called the Forbidden City. Around 1960, she became an accidental U.S. restaurant owner as she put a $10,000 deposit on a store in Francisco found by friends who backed out of the deal and left her on the hook for the non-refundable deposit. Chen, "They think chop suey is the only thing we have in China," Chen told NPR in 1917. "What a shame." She also became the rare female owner in an area of the restaurants owned by men. "I told them, you guys just watch me." She told Sylvia in 2000, "I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it very well." Business started slowly before critics including late San Francisco Chronicle columnist Herb King, started singing the praises of the northern Chinese cuisine, including kung pao chicken and twice-cooked pork. According to chronicles, she moved the restaurant to a larger space on San Francisco's Chiradiu Square in 1968 and later opened a second Mandarin in Beverly Hills, California in 1975. The original Mandarin closed in 2006. Chen's son, Philip, bought the Beverly Hills location in 1989 and co-founded the P.F. Chen's restaurant chain, carrying on his mother's impressive legacy. I think I changed what average people know about Chinese food. She told the Chronicles in 2007 they didn't know China was such a big country. A previous version of the story was first published on Today.com. Thanks. Bye.